Well, the first thing you're probably noticing about me is that I'm clearly not a parent as I'm speaking to the parent breakout session, but I do have a dog who I'm fairly certain is gay, so I think that counts. But I will be speaking to you today both from my personal experience as an LGBTQ plus individual and as a therapist with the LGBTQ plus and LDS populations. So very recently I had a new client start working with me. As most of the clients that I work with, she is gay and LDS, really struggling. And the very first messages, even before we started sessions, just to book the sessions, were filled with these just truly heartbreaking cries for help of how she was completely miserable, how she didn't know what she could do, how long she could go on for, and telling me about thoughts of taking her own life. Now, as most of you in this room are probably aware, this is a very common issue for those in the LGBTQ plus community. In fact, most estimates state that about 500% higher rates of suicidal ideation for LGBTQ plus youth than their straight and cisgendered peers. It's to the point that if I am working with a client who is in the LGBTQ plus community who tells me that they've never thought about taking their own life or about death in that sort of way, that's when I'm actually surprised. So, it's obvious that the world, and unfortunately sometimes our own cultures around us, can be very unsafe and very hurtful for LGBTQ plus people. But what really broke my heart for this client, and for so many others like her that I've met, was that the hurt and the damage was not coming from the outside world, but was coming from within the walls of her own home. And that was the place that she actually felt the least safe. That she would stay at work extra hours because she didn't want to go home. When she came out a few years ago, her parents tried some of the usual suspects, which started with trying to change it, trying to fix her. And when the conversion therapy, which for legal reasons wasn't called that, but let's be perfectly real, that's what it was, didn't take, they went to the next defense mechanisms, trying to hide it, trying to cover it up, telling her to not talk to anyone about it, especially not her siblings or their bishop, because it would be too shameful for their family. Which culminated in, now that she is a legal adult, in her trying to talk more about it and trying to go on some dates and being threatened on 3 different occasions to be kicked out of her home. I wish I could tell you that this was a super extreme case, that this was something that is a one-off that doesn't happen that often, but sadly it's actually fairly common, especially in my line of work, to hear these stories. Maybe some of you recognize elements of this from your own stories or stories that you've heard about. When I am sitting with clients in these sessions, confidentiality with a therapist is a great thing, but sometimes I hate it because I just want to call these parents up and shake them so hard because I know that they love their kid, but I also know that the way they're showing that love for their kid is literally killing them sometimes. Now, I'm going to assume that for the vast majority of you here who are choosing to take your time and your money to be at a conference like Gather, you're not these kind of parents. But I also know that, like others have talked to you about today, there will be parents reaching out to you who may be in that spot. And so if you feel like this doesn't quite apply to you, I would ask you to please just pay attention as we talk about this today, because there will be someone from your ward, from your neighborhood, from your family, whose kid has just come out and who comes to you asking what they can do for help, what they do about this, because they're terrified, and you can keep this information in your back pocket for that day. So as I'm sitting with these, when I was asked to speak here at Gather and speak to the parents, I thought this is the perfect time that I can tell all of the parents all the things that I always am sitting in sessions wishing that I could shake into the parents of these clients. So that's what we're going to do today. And there's 3 main things that I want to talk to you about today. The first is what your job as a parent isn't. The second is what your job as a parent really is, the main job. And the third is what is the main tool, the best tool that you have to do that job well. So, first, what your job isn't. This is the big question. And, as a parent, you wear a lot of hats. You have a lot of jobs. You are chefs and chauffeurs and stylists and teachers and nurses and all the different things. And as your kids grow up, they start needing those jobs from you less and less. And unfortunately, what I see with a lot of the parents I work with happening is that if we have over-identified or are clinging too hard to one of these jobs, we can actually do it to the detriment of our kids. If I asked every parent in the room to name what you think the main job of a parent is, we would get a lot of beautiful answers and things that I think would probably make awesome second or third main jobs. We'd probably get answers like protect your kids from harm, make sure your kids are happy, teach them right from wrong. Great goals. But unfortunately not the main job. And the reason I know that, despite not being a parent, is because they're not possible. So how could they be the main job? We cannot protect our kids from all harm. The world is a scary, dangerous place sometimes. But what we can do is teach our kids that when they are hurt, either by the world or unfortunately sometimes by us, where they can go for healing, where they can go for safety in order to heal and move on, what they can do to overcome that. We can't, unfortunately, teach our kids all right from wrong. There's no exhaustive list, not to mention the fact that right and wrong is a very subjective philosophical question that we don't have time to get into today. But even if we could, what our kids really need to learn is that in an increasingly complicated and nuanced world where they're going to be faced with really tough choices, they need to learn how to trust their inner voice, their own thoughts and feelings to determine where right and wrong is going to be for them in their lives. And of course, we can't make anyone else happy, not our partners, not our kids. And even if we could, the things that make you happy may not be the things that make your kids happy, and so trying to do that may just end up pushing them in the other direction. What I've seen time and time again is that when we focus on the wrong job, we fall into some common psychological traps. And I'm going to just list two of them today that I work with a lot of my clients on. The first one is called psychological reactance. And if you're a parent of teenagers, you know what this is, even if you don't know the term. When someone knows that their autonomy is being threatened or feels that it's being threatened, they will push hard in the other direction. In the world of LGBTQ and LDS cross space, what I see this most often as is if a parent has over-identified with the job of making sure their kid is happy, and they think the only way to do that is in the church. If that kid then comes to them and says, I don't feel safe here, I don't feel welcomed or wanted, and the parent says, well, sorry, it doesn't matter, you gotta go on Sunday, that's what our family does. What that's teaching their kid is that their autonomy is being threatened, that their thoughts and feelings aren't important to their parents. And when the time comes in their life when they inevitably are old enough to make their own decisions, they will push away not only from the church, but from that parent as well. That's psychological reactance. The second is the expectancy effect. The expectancy effect basically says what we expect to happen, we will subconsciously act to create in the world. So for example, easy one is if you expect that you have a big hard test in school and you expect that you're gonna fail it, you're probably not gonna be studying very well, if at all. Probably not gonna sleep well the night before, you're not gonna be focused during the test, and so you will end up creating what you expected to happen. Again, in the world of the LGBTQ and LDS cross space, where I've seen this happen is a parent whose kid has come out to them, is terrified that this is going to be the worst thing in their kid's life. It's going to make them miserable, they can never be happy with this, things are gonna be way too difficult. And then out of that fear, ends up acting subconsciously in ways that create the very misery that they were afraid of and expecting in the first place. So this is why we have to be really careful to not focus on the wrong jobs. Jobs like wanting your kids to be happy and wanting to teach them right from wrong, great ideals, but if they take precedence over our main job, they can lead to some of these dangerous traps. So that brings up the question, obviously, what is our main job? What I've seen in my professional career and what I have seen in all of the studies that I've been able to find on this is that the number one job that is the highest predictor of secure attachment in children and successful childhood developmental stages is emotional safety. Kids need to know that they have a safe and secure home base, that no matter what is happening out in the world, that they can always come back to find safety. That they can leave the nest for a while, they can go out, they can explore, they can make mistakes, they can get hurt, and then they can come back to find healing. This is what, like I said, in therapist land, we call secure attachment. Basically, that a child feels that they have enough confidence and worth in themselves that they can go out and make their own choices, but then also know that those relationships are safe and secure enough that they can be a predictable means to finding safety when they come back to it. In childhood developmental stages, as a toddler, this might look like a toddler who feels safe to be able to go out onto the playground and at their own pace, meet the new kids, try the monkey bars, fall and scrape their knee, and know that mom or dad is on the park bench waiting for them with open arms to kiss it better and send them out again so they can have that reassurance of confidence. As your kids grow up, as young adults, maybe when they're in college, this sounds like a kid who feels confident to be able to go out into the world and explore on their own, to be able to take risks, make choices, and yeah, screw up, probably pretty badly, But know that that safety net and that home base is just a phone call or a drive away, and that they will be met with love and caring and acceptance, and not with lectures or with judgment. We know that the world often is unsafe or unkind, but study after study has shown that kids are able to find the most success in creating secure attachments and healthy resiliency when they know that their home is a safe and kind place, no matter what the world is being like. I feel like this was exemplified really well by the mother of one of our presenters at this conference, Tom Christofferson. And in his book, which I'm sure many of you have read, he shares that his mother said this to all of his siblings. I have this picture in my head of when Dad was called as a bishop and the local paper sent a photographer for the story. You boys were wearing your bow ties, and I really felt like we had it all figured out, that we were the perfect Mormon family. But then life happens, and I realized that there is no perfect Mormon family. The only thing we can really be perfect at is loving each other. The most important lesson your children will learn from how our family treats their Uncle Tom is that nothing they can do will take them outside of the circle of our family's love. Sister Christofferson understood that emotional safety for one child would be reflected to all of the rest of them. So, great ideal. We would all love it if we could have these perfect little families where all of our kids always felt safe and always loved us. So what's the greatest tool that we have at our disposal to do that? The good news is that it's not getting it right the first time, because that's impossible. I like to say to the parents that I work with that every parent screws their kid up in a beautiful, unique way. Your parents did it to you, you did it to your kids, I'll do it to mine, they'll do it to theirs. That's just how it goes. But when asked about this, one expert, Dr. Becky Kennedy, who is a therapist, a parenting coach, literally has written books on the subject. When she's asked what is the number one parenting strategy that she recommends to parents, this is what she had to say. I feel like I have a hard time answering questions without some nuance, but there is no nuance to this question. Repair. Boom, done. It is the most important thing we can do. But what does that actually look like as a parent to repair? I think, unfortunately, a lot of us, whether in parenting or just in life in general, we get this idea in our heads that in order to be respected, in order to be listened to or obeyed, we can't ever show weakness or vulnerability, we can't admit mistakes. But actually what studies have found is that when surveyed about the question, children who reported having parents who frequently admitted their mistakes, owned up to it, and apologized for it, reported higher level of respect for their parents than the children who reported that their parents never apologized and never owned up to their mistakes. Incidentally, that also is a really good way to show your kids what they can do when they make mistakes, thus increasing the chances that they will have a more healthy and secure attachment style for the rest of their lives. So, win-win. So if the question is, how do we repair as parents? There are three really important key steps that can make repair very simple, even though it may still be hard and scary. The first is to directly acknowledge what you've done wrong, verbally, specifically own up to it and apologize for it. The second, explain clearly how it is about you that you made that mistake, and it is not about them, about their worth or their value. And third, tell them what you wish you would have done differently, and what lesson you hope that they could have taken from that if you had. An easy example for this in our situation is if you as a parent recognize or remember that you used to say hurtful, homophobic, unkind comments. If you can go to that child and start with one, hey, remember how I was thinking the other day and I remembered how I used to say some pretty awful things about the LGBTQ community, and I am so sorry that I said that. Those things were hurtful and they were unkind, and I should not have done it. 2, that was about me, how I was raised, and I was raised with some false ideas that I'm still working on trying to figure out and to learn new things, and I'm sorry that I wasn't more compassionate and understanding, and it has nothing to do with you or how much I love and care about you. 3, if I could go back, I would have never said those things, and in fact, I would have said a lot of positive things about the LGBTQ plus people in our life, because I would want you to know that we are a family who loves and accepts everyone, and that you'll always be welcome here. If you follow those 3 steps, repair is easy. And the good news is that repair is the number one predictor of childhood success in development and secure attachments. When I was preparing for this talk today, I had a lot of people ask me, what do their queer kids want? I reached out to parents and asked what they would want to hear, since I'm not a parent, and they asked, what does my queer kid want from me? And unfortunately, I can't really tell you, because they all want different things, right? Some of them may want for you to be in the pride parade. Some of them may just want for you to respect their pronouns. Some of them may wish that you will stay in the church and that you will fight for the other queer members there. And some may secretly wish that you would leave the church with them because they've been so hurt by it. I can't tell you what all of them want individually, but I can tell you the one thing that I think all of them have in common that I strongly believe, that one thing that every kid wants from their parents, queer or not, is safety. And interestingly enough, when you can create that safety, then they'll be able to tell you themselves what they want, and you won't have to ask me to do it. I think the best way that we can do this, that we can enact this repair, is by communicating how much you love your kids with specifics. I love you no matter what is a great start, but I'm sorry, it's not good enough. Because when you say that, your kid is sitting there wondering if there's caveats. Wondering if I love you no matter what has some little secret hidden agenda. Because they've seen in too many of their friends' lives that that's the case. You have to be specific. I love you, and no matter who you are, no matter who you love, no matter how you identify or what your future family looks like, no matter what your future church involvement looks like, you and your future partner will always be welcome in our home, with our family, with open arms. That's what it takes. We often hear, especially in church contexts, that faith is the opposite of fear. I don't think that that's actually the case, though, because unfortunately, both in my personal and professional lives, I've seen faith be corrupted and hijacked to create fear. What I really think the opposite of fear is love. And fortunately for us, we have a really, really good example of how perfect love casteth out all fear. And so if you've got fear for your kids right now, if you're wondering what their life is going to look like, how things are going to work out for them in the church, or any of the other million questions that you might have, turn that over to the one who taught us the best. Let our Savior and our heavenly parents do their job. Whatever needs to be worked out or figured out or revealed or anything else, leave that to them. They're better at their job than we would be. And you focus on your number one most important job, which is that at the end of the day, your kid knows for 1,000% certainty that they are always and will always be welcome and safe and secure in their home and with you. And if every parent could do that, I'd be out of a job. And I'd be grateful for the chance to find a new one. Thank you.